Hi, I'm Shane Fox, CEO of Link 3D, and you're watching A Student's Perspective.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of A Student's Perspective. My name is Natalia Colasurdo, and today I'm talking with Shane Fox from Link 3D. I'm very excited to talk to him about his unique path to finding his way and what he does now, and we're going to see if we can link together all of his similarities within the design industry. Shane?
Thank you, Natalia, for having me. So my name is Shane Fox. I am currently the Chief Executive Officer and co-founder for a industrial 3D printing mechanical engineering software company, which is called Link 3D. It's a long path to get to Link 3D, but we are focused on mission critical applications for aerospace, automotive, defense, oil and gas, and in the medical space.
Very, very nice. I'm excited to talk about Link 3D, but before we do, would you mind telling us a little bit about how you got started and let's say, where was your field education taking place?
Yeah. So I am not a pedigree. So I went to a state school in Pennsylvania. It was called California University of Pennsylvania. Uh, pretty small institution. I studied MIS and marketing design. So it's a really weird background that I have, but the management information system side allowed me to understand how to process and correlate data from information systems. And marketing design, I've always had a love for aesthetics and clean lines and the Bauhaus movement, and I've just always appreciated design since I've been a little kid. My dad was, really into art, and our home was always, very clean and modern. And my father cared about every piece in the home, and it just kind of passed over to me. So
Yeah.
that's my education and my background.
There's a lot to be said for what we surround ourselves with as far as at a young age, especially. You kind of build that eye for certain things as far as how things are put together, and you create that inkling of curiosity, I think, from very young.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, my first obsession was furniture. I
Okay.
don't I don't know why, but I was very much into interior design.
Mhm.
And I used to like take apart tables and try to rebuild tables, and
Right.
I
So
would
there's
take.
something to be said about all of that, about how it kind of led you to where you are today.
I've connected the dots years later.
Yeah. So well, we're here to help you connect them. So
Yeah.
what was your
Except for
first?
IKEA.
Yeah,
Except
what's
for
up?
I don't like putting IKEA furniture together. That's
Oh, for some reason, a lot of people tend to have that issues.
yeah, it's not easy.
I wonder why. Maybe be able to figure it out. So tell me, what was your first job experience out of the educational field?
Uh, so my so actually one thing you know I know there was a question that wanted to present to me if I can go back to my younger self.
Hmm.
So I'm going to kind of skip to that as I
I
answer this.
usually put that at the end, but yeah, let's start off with it.
We'll go back to it, but one thing what I realized was I had a mentor in college,
Hmm.
um, and I was really lost. I had no idea what I wanted to do. When I grew up, I had no idea what I really even wanted to major in until my second year.
Mhm.
And, I had this amazing professor who must have saw something into me, and he said, you're young, but you should go out and do an internship. And my first internship was at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And
Okay.
if there's one thing I could say, that program taught me discipline and professionalism. Um, because you learn everything from sales to marketing to customer service. I mean, you're basically an
Right.
employee. I did it in the summer. And so outside of pre-graduation, that was my first experience. And what I realized was, I was very fortunate. I ended up like winning their national scholarship for, I think, like the most insurance sold. I don't even remember. This is like 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And what I realized is I love to work. And what it also made me realize was that I wasn't, I was much more of the type of learner I was an experiential learner rather than sitting in a classroom and being lectured. And,
Yeah.
I
I feel
realized,
a lot of designers or design mind thinking people tend to be that more experiential learners.
yeah, yeah, it had nothing to do with
Hands
design.
on,
But
being
for
able
me,
to work on your
yeah,
communication skills one-on-one as far as working at a dealership.
yeah, well, that was like the most important thing. It just taught me, right, communication and customer service, patience, right? And it just and it taught me professionalism. It's their internship program is I think it's pretty nationally recognized, and it was a great experience for me. So that was actually my first what I would call professional gig. Although it was
Yeah.
a internship, it was my first kind of gig in college.
You don't realize that a job position like that can give you so much. I think as starting out in school, people might be more timid to take positions like that when it's actually the complete opposite, to be kind of thrown into an environment like that where you're only going to be able to learn through the experience.
Yeah, and it had
There's
nothing to do
no
with my degree.
exactly. That's kind of interesting because a lot of people feel like they have to do jobs within their career as far as when they're working. There's a lot of pressure as far as internships are concerned. But the fact
Yeah,
that you were able to kind of mesh the two of them together was interesting.
yeah, yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was an interesting summer.
For sure, for sure. Any other work experiences after that one that kind of maybe derived from it or was a little bit different?
Yeah, I mean, so I ended up, when I graduated, I maxed out credits. I had 3 internships, but the one that really kind of, I would say, shaped me as a professional and as, a lot, it helped shape me as a human being was
Mm-hmm.
my senior year of college. I got accepted into a program in Washington, D.C. called the Washington Center for Internships and Academic Seminars. I highly suggest that, if people have the opportunity to apply the program. It's a little hard to get into, but it's essentially like a co-op. So you then go and do schooling at GW and some other schools that they'll place you in. Now you get the credits back at your school, but you work. And I had a love for technology, and I started to realize that I really liked um, the more strategic side, the more strategic thinking side of businesses. And when I was at
Just
Enterprise,
going
I
to,
wanted to know,
yeah, I was just
like,
going to
what was I
interrupt
learning?
there.
Yeah,
At Enterprise, I feel like you kind of learned or you kind of picked up a lot on efficiency.
yeah,
Working at any dealership or especially things to do with cars and automotives as well, we can trace back as being so efficient and kind of having that strategic plan to kind of help move things in and out of like
yeah,
the factories and of the stores. It's kind of I'm seeing that a lot.
yeah. No, I agree. And I like, and that's when I got really curious, about business and how business works and how it operates, because you touch all these different aspects. So I was really lucky. I got hired by one of the best think tanks in the United States. It was called National Strategies Incorporated. So it was run by a guy named Alfred Gordon, who was Como's advisor for years, Como Senior. And I was put under this guy. His name was Paul Joyle.
Mhm.
And Paul Joyle was the chief investigator for the Capitol bombing in the 80s. He had worked for the CIA for years. So again, completely different, a
Yeah.
180 in career direction. And my job there, we were a think tank, and what we did is we helped foreign governments introduce their technology products to the US government. So you can imagine if you're Germany and you create a technology, it's very hard to distribute the technology in the United States, right? Vice versa. So we were a think tank and a strategist, and we used a lot of political leverage. We had governors and ex-governors and all sorts of different lobbyists. And the first experience I had with technology was there. I built a database that was able to correlate some statistical information and so on and so forth. And from there, I started learning, about how to influence people in the right way. And I learned how data and analytics, were, we say data is, king, or data is gold. I started learning about how data was, being leveraged to influence the government and decision-making processes from a strategic point of view. And obviously these guys were very accomplished, and gals that worked there were very accomplished, and they mentored me. And
what was your mindset going into that world at
I have
first?
no idea what the hell I'm doing.
Can you put yourself back to how you felt, maybe even at first
I just
day on
remember
the job?
I just remember getting to Washington, D.C. and being like, I met Alfred Gordon, I was an intern. They did like the whole intern welcome. And I just remember like, I have no idea about think tanks. I have no idea about lobbying. I have no idea about.
Did you know what to expect would be the question? No,
Zero. I had no idea. And what I've learned, now today, what I've learned is that if you don't create your own path and you don't speak up and you don't really insert yourself, it's going to be very hard to progress in a company. And luckily I had this idea to build this database, because what we were doing is we were collecting when Obama had put out the stimulus package for all of the cities. This was years ago. There was a lot of infrastructure and technology requirements or requests from mayors and governors for their state. And the documents were thousands of pages. So we were able to essentially, take in a lot of data manually into the database I had structured for them, and then write some correlation to understand what foreign governments outside of the US would have technology that can serve. Wow. And that's how we were given our business development people, hey, you should go talk to, as an example, it's a random example, but it's a good one. In Texas, wanted road signs. So part of the stimulus package and the road signs, I'll still remember this, were to use wireless, non-mobile devices, right? So like the old headphones you would have, or Bluetooth and things like that. So they had like millions of dollars for budget for signs, right? Just signs. So we ended up, collecting this data, understanding it. And there was a company in France called Parrot. Parrot used to make those weird Bluetooth things you'd put in your ear and all these devices. So Parrot lobbied and donated money, and influenced Texas, right, through the stimulus of helping them fund the signs and all of these campaigns. And then Texas was one of the first states to outlaw like mobile devices while you drive. And it was sponsored by Parrot. And Parrot started selling their Bluetooth technology into the US. So it was really weird. It's just an example.
It's crazy how you could literally look at a lawn sign or any sign in general and think how that might have been influenced to get there.
Super weird.
But
it was cool, right? Because what I learned then too is like international business experience, right? So I started learning how to, deal with the French and the way that the French business mindset and their culture and how they wanted to influence. So
I'm picking up on a couple of different skill sets. Research, a lot of research seems like, and you have to be kind of good at communicating the research that you find and then correlating it into whatever foreign policies that you were just in or communicating with.
Yeah.
It was like a
think tanks.
Job.
Yeah, think tanks are, it's just, you don't realize all the dots and how they get connected, and
right.
But yeah, completely random, but it was a great experience.
Yeah, but I think all these things you owe to now your position as CEO at Linked 3D. So I just kind of wanted to describe your role as the co-founder and CEO, and that of maybe your partner of like a CTO.
Yeah. So I mean, this is my second technology startup. My first one was acquired by Autodesk, which is
Oh yeah, let's start there. Let's talk about that. Yeah, let's
so I
talk
actually
about that.
worked at Autodesk, believe it or not.
A lot of
And then,
designers would love to hear about that side of the
yeah,
realm.
yeah. So you know, when I make it quick. When I graduated, I went and worked for a hedge fund in Wall Street. I hated it. Absolutely hated it. I didn't like the people. I didn't like the processes. I didn't like the methodology. I
Right.
didn't like the only thing anyone cared about was money. And I was like, after 6 months, I quit.
You saw something totally different.
Yeah, it wasn't for me. And randomly enough, Knoll was recruiting like I forget what my title was. It was like something like educational research, something to do with education design and research.
Okay.
Essentially, Knoll, obviously provides furniture for K through 12 and universities, and then
a lot
home.
to do with materials and things like
Yeah.
that, fabrics. So I can see where that research chapter would be developed.
Yeah, super weird. But I had gotten recruited in this position, and it was actually kind of the first, view for me. It was like the first bird-eyed lens into how technology was being applied for learning, as an example. And you think it's a chair or it's a desk, but you don't, when you go into a space, right, and the lines are beautiful and the space is inspirational. I remember when I met Stephen, and I think it was the architectural school at Marywood, I was like blown away at the loft. Like I just loved it, right? And it was inspiring.
I can remember the first day I walked in there too. That's exactly what I said.
And he's probably like, who is this guy? Like, talking about, I think I'd like done a research presentation for him, and I had a sales rep who was obviously selling the furniture. But what I realized was, that's when I fell in love with design and aesthetic. And when I fell in love with kind of inspirational spaces.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, I was at Knoll, and Knoll was switching around some things, and I left the company, and my two best friends were started a company called Within Technologies, and they came from London to New York City. They were staying in my apartment, and they asked if they could stay there. I said, "Are you guys still doing that startup thing?" And they're like, "Yeah." And this was my childhood best friend. He pulled out a heat exchanger that was 3D printed in copper, and it was the weirdest looking shape I'd ever seen. And that's when I fell in love with 3D printing. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. And I was like, he's like, this was made in our software. So Within essentially was a CAD system, as I'm sure everyone here knows CAD. It was a CAD system for designing topology optimized and generative design mechanical parts. And they said, you need a job. We need, help in BD and research and development. Do you want a gig? And I said, sure. They said, we can't pay you, but we could pay you in these things called options. And I was like, okay. And so I basically called my dad. I was like, I'm moving to London. I'm going to work for Cave and Cia. I'm not going to get paid, but I'm going to live in their apartment. And yeah. So I sold, like within a week, put everything in my apartment in New York City on Craigslist, moved to London.
Nice.
Yeah. So again,
this is your sign. If you want to take that chance, take it.
Yep. Yeah. So I went from Enterprise Rent-A-Car to a think tank in Washington, D.C. to Knoll. And now I am kind of a little full circle because of my background in data science and MIS, it was starting to kind of come full circle. And, and I went there, and this leads up to the Autodesk story, is that, we ended up selling the business to Autodesk in 2014. And I went and worked at Autodesk, and the learning, I mean, I'm fortunate. I mentor a lot of college students, and a lot of people say, oh, you should go work for a big company and learn process. I always say you should go work for a startup and learn how to deal with chaos, and understand that you're not going to have just 10 things to do that day, and then you get to go. Right?
Be exposed to everything that could possibly happen, and then
when we sold Within, there was 11 of us. I did sales, marketing, I did quality, test automation, I did data science research. I was doing business development, and you're put into the fire.
Mm-hmm.
and it was the best experience. That's obviously what changed my life and propelled my
Yeah.
career. But,
I see that.
it was great.
I see that you're kind of able to, again, apply your design like thinking mind into all these different roles that are that benefit you in the end. You know, you were doing your strategy, you're doing your marketing, you were doing all of those things for yourself. You were able to kind of you were able to handle it, obviously, but I like find myself in that same situation where like, okay, I love graphics, I could do that. I love the design aspect. But wait, I need to be able to sell and market my designs and my work. So like again, that's where the marketing plays in order to have your own firm or design firm or anything like that, you know, you need to know the business side of things. So it's like, wow, I kind of have that potential to kind of be in all of these different industries and facets.
Yep.
So coming out with like any type of design degree, you know, you are kind of faced with that question at the end of graduation, kind of like, where do I want to take my design degree? Because it does not have to be an office, you know, 9 to 5. It can, there's so many different ways that you can go, and you're just one of those really great examples.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be in a necessary field that your education, you know, makes you think it applies to.
Yeah.
And when I started Link 3D, you know, it's really funny because I hate being called an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like it. I like being called a problem solver. But when it all came back full circle was in September of 16 when we started this company, and I built the first wireframe. And I was like, all the design, the aesthetics, the clean lines, the ease of use, colors, the beauty, all of this stuff came to me. I mean, this is like a hardcore mechanical engineering software.
Yeah.
From day one, my partner and I, we said it's the Apple model. If my grandmother can't understand how to use this very sophisticated software, then we're scrapping it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's funny. Yesterday, I was yelling at someone at work because they didn't use our brand guidelines for a presentation. I wanted the font, I wanted the color, I wanted the right logo. You know, and for me, Link 3D is like I always say it's my artwork. I'm an artist, you know, and I always wanted to be an artist. I always wanted to be a designer of some sort. What I realized, building software is an art, and it is design. And what I've realized too is that, you know, although it's not a consumer facing product, you know, it's a B2B product, that the engineers and the customers appreciate the simplicity, right? They appreciate every color, every button, every click, you know, everything that you do in the software has been designed for simplicity, right? So, I mean, we all know CAD. CAD is not an easy tool to use, and there's a million buttons and clicks and features and benefits. And for me, I wanted to strip down, you know, all the things that weren't valuable, right? And make it very simple to use. And, you know, and I learned a ton at Autodesk. I mean, Autodesk is just an amazing company with beautiful product, beautiful design, and great
going back to your inspiration to work for Autodesk and looking at that first 3D printed model. I remember being just as inspired as well, like having those facilities at Marywood University, which I'm sure you have seen, as far as the 3D printing services and the laser cutters. I couldn't tell you how much I've used my laser cutter machine like at school. Like I miss it so much now after graduating. All the tools at your disposal, you know, being able to see your 2D designs come to life, you know, there's a lot to be said for that, and a lot of inspiration for the students, I think, in different schools, that if they have these resources, to use them. And I stress that so much.
Yep. Yeah, no, and I mean, I'm going to go off camera for a second.
Yeah.
I have some, I think I'll show you what blew my mind, you know, and I've always like, yeah, I've always wanted to do something that was impactful for, you know, humanity or sustainability or whatever it could be. And a lot of times, you know, you get into a job or a career, like when I was at a hedge fund, I was like, I'm doing nothing good for anybody, you know, and for some it's necessary. And for some people, you know, they find their happiness, they find their serenity. But, you know, what was really cool was when I was at Within, there was a company called Biomet. So Biomet is like Stryker. It's one of the largest orthopedic companies. And they were using our software to design custom knee implants for people who had either lost a limb or needed a knee replacement. They were also doing craniomaxillofacial. And this part was, I got a sample. This is a tibial tray, and it
Wow.
was custom made for a kid who had, gotten into a car accident. This is the sample. It's not the one that's in his body,
Yeah.
but, it started realizing was that, the power of software and the design and the engineer. I mean, being able to create this and help, this kid who needed this custom knee replacement was kind of my first realize that, I could be in manufacturing, I could be in software, I could be in design, but still have some impact. And
Right. You can kind of take it and mold it into the experience that you want to get out of it, in a sense,
yeah, exactly.
Just
So
apply that same process thinking, that same design skill process thinking into what you
yeah,
want, basically.
I'm all over the place, but I'm an
That's
all over.
great. That's
I'm an
great. That's where you want to be. The
I'm
minute
all
you slow down, the minute you stop, it's no good.
die. The minute you stop learning, you die. But yeah, I mean, it's just, I've done an interview like this in a while. It's just interesting. Now I'm sitting here thinking like all the dots and how they connected. And,
Yeah, I want that aha moment. I think we're having it right now.
yeah.
So yeah, I want to dive into your roles now, like kind of how Link 3D runs as a company and as a process in itself. We can digest that a bit. So yeah, talking about like the different roles between a CEO and a CTO, which I'm not too familiar on as far as
Yeah.
business is concerned. I want you if you could elaborate.
Yeah. So so my CTO, our engineering office. So Link 3D, we're a global company now. We were formed in 2016. My partner Vishal and I at my kitchen table in Chelsea, 17th Street. Still have
Nice.
the table, and yeah, went from very conceptual thesis, and we built what we call an MVP, right? A minimum viable product within a year. I was funding it myself, which I was lucky to be able to do that. And you know, I because I had because I had contacts in the industry and I stayed in additive 3D printing or additive manufacturing. I'd gone out to like GE as an example. I went out to an aerospace company um, that I won't mention, and they validated the product. They're like, "This is great. We need this. We need this for our workflow." And so I had to muster up the courage to go raise money. And within we had never raised money, so we owned 100% of the business when we sold it. And on Autodesk, I didn't. I was there for 18 months because of a contract, and
Yeah.
so I went out. I raised my, I had met some people who were angel investors, and I pitched them on the idea, and they said yes. And so we raised $600,000, and
Would this be considered making your module portfolio? Is this what it would be considered, or is that something different? What is a modular portfolio?
Of our product?
Yeah. Like, what is a modular portfolio?
Yeah, so that's when it evolved. What we wanted to do is we built this minimum viable product, and we needed money to expand into a platform. So in our software, you have essentially, if you think of an operating system, so like, iOS or Android or Windows, the operating system is what powers the technology. And then you have applications, right? So like Word or Excel or, apps on your phone. So we built the foundational technology, raised the money to start building applications on top of our modular platform.
Got it.
And so we raised this money, and we started hiring more engineers, and we hired a sales guy, and then in 2018, we landed our first few customers, right? So GE Aviation was our first customer. So you want to talk about demanding? You want to talk about a demanding first customer? They basically they had owned us and basically were telling us what to do, and we started getting more success, and went out, raised another round of money, and we raised $2.5 million, and we got our first office. So we moved out of my kitchen, and started expanding the portfolio of products that we offered within in our operating system or platform, and then in 2019 the company just took off. With we didn't really we knew it, but it was kind of sudden, We expanded into Japan. We opened an office in Japan. We expanded into Munich, Germany.
And it was because you offered this need that was uncalled, that was like not being met in industry. Basically.
That's right. It was, yeah.
How were you able to identify those uncalled needs? I guess, yeah, those unattended needs in industry.
Listening. Yep. I mean, having a network of, people that obviously had respected me from within an Autodesk, and that I had always listened to, and what I really listened for was what are your immediate pains when you design a part, right? And what, through the manufacturing workflow, what are the biggest risks that you face today versus in the future for quality or printability or whatever the case may be. I don't want to go too much into the software. And I just listened. And I was like, and after I heard it over and over and over again, this is when I was at Autodesk.
Yeah.
That's when I formed Link 3D, because I knew I had market validation. I knew that there was a problem in the industrial 3D printing space that no one was solving. And our motto at Link 3D is be the best listener you can be, because the customer, the client, whoever it is, they will, whether they know it or not, they will tell you their pain. They will tell you their risks. And then you have to just be a good listener to cipher that information and understand, can I solve it? Can I not solve it? Is it value add to solve it? Does it make sense? So yeah, a lot of listening. And
can you remember a point where you decided that it was time to really take that step yourself and create this and take that step forward? Do you remember that point where you knew it was time to answer that call?
Of course, I do. I was at Airbus Helicopter in Germany. I worked for Autodesk, and I was an Autodesk employee, and my job was to make sure they knew of the portfolio of technology we had, from CAD to topology optimization. And that I still remember the day they said, this tool is great, but this is what we really need to start scaling up our production. Is Autodesk going to build a software tool to help us do this? And in that moment it clicked. My 5 years of being in the space, I kept hearing that same question, but I wasn't listening and connecting the dots. And after I heard that, I had called a friend, and I was like, look, I want to solve this problem. I want to launch my own company. I want to leave Autodesk. So I told Autodesk, this is what I'm going to go do. I worked for the CTO, Jeff Kowalski, and he was like, you should go do it. I think it's a great idea. And I quit. Quit, left my good salary, health insurance, flying around the world. Like, I was being treated like a king, but I knew that this problem needed to be solved. And if I didn't do it, someone else would have did it.
Right.
And it was my first step into launching my own company and, having my own freedom to design and to think and to create and to build a market. And, luckily, all the pieces have fallen into place. A little bit is listening, a little bit of it is luck, a lot of it is hard work. And yeah, that was my aha moment. I remember leaving Airbus Helicopter saying, I'm going to do it. I called my dad. My dad's like, don't quit your job again. You have a really good job. Like, what are you doing? And today, we built almost a $50 million business. So it was a good experience. It was a huge risk, but that was the moment that I knew it all connected.
Coming from someone who has not only been a part of 2 startup companies and ideas, what does the word failure mean to you? And can we elaborate on that and how it affects maybe like upcoming designer students or engineers, anybody aspiring to start something of their own?
If you aren't failing, you're not trying. You have to fail.
Yeah.
You have to fail. How else do you learn?
Mm-hmm.
I've fallen on my face 1,000 times, right? And it's cliche, but it's, can you get back up, right? And I tell, our engineer, like, I'm the CEO, but I'm really a technologist at heart, right? So like I'm still in the grind with my engineers.
Yeah, you're in the trenches, as they would say.
I hate the financial stuff. I hate P&Ls, but I have to do it because I'm also the chair of our board, so I represent the board. But if you're not failing, you haven't pushed yourself to the limit.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not failing, and you're not trying hard enough, I mean, it's all good to fail. That's the only way you learn. I mean, you can correlate failure all the way back to the time you're an infant, right?
Mm-hmm.
You walk as a baby, you fall, you get back up, you fall, get back up, right? You fail. So we've been failing since we've been born. That's always been my methodology. And I think the best way to learn is through failure, and to not be ashamed or embarrassed. It's no one's perfect. And for me, it's the only way to learn.
That's a good one. A couple more words to throw at you that I figured you can elaborate a lot on would be connectivity and workflow. Those are, I think, two big words that we use a lot, or at least I used to use a lot when I was in school, as far as group projects and working with people, and how to be the most efficient self that you can be. I wonder if you had any tips.
So when you say connectivity, you mean to other people?
Connectivity to other people. Maybe even to
technology-wise.
I'm thinking technology-wise. Yeah.
IoT platforms.
Honestly, that's what I'm saying. Whatever you want to elaborate it towards, and then just explain what.
Well, I think one, a really good friend of mine went to Parsons.
Okay, yeah, I looked into there.
I used to be so jealous of their curriculum, because connectivity is actually, I think it's on like 14. There's like a big word that says connectivity. And you think, what does that mean? And I mean, I think like the design schools are the best because you guys always collaborate.
Yeah.
Like I've noticed that in any school or anyone I've ever met, like, I was at MIS. So like that was very like data science, like nerding out by yourself.
Yeah.
I used to love the marketing and design classes because I would get to work with people and hear their ideas. I mean, so connectivity, I mean, it means two things to me. One, it means IoT, because Link 3D develops protocols to connect into industrial machines to help process data to make better design decisions.
Okay.
But connectivity, I mean, COVID, it's terrible, but the ability to be able to connect and relate to people and listen. I always go back to listening, and just listening to other people's ideas and principles and backgrounds. It just helps grow your mind. Like for me, when I travel for work, across the world, like I love to connect with the culture, right? Because
your surroundings.
The surroundings, it inspires me. It helps me.
I would say you're very in tune, people like that.
You
work on that, anybody can really work on being more in tune with their senses, their surroundings, takes a bit of mindset, I think, reworking, but it's definitely possible.
Yeah, like you can connect to anything, people, technology, places. Like some of my best inspirations is like riding on a boring train in Europe, going to a meeting, just looking out the window, right? And like just seeing that things are different than the way we're taught here in the United States, and that it works, connecting to that.
And bringing back that experiential learning, traveling a lot.
There's just not one way. There's more than one way to do something right. When you travel and you connect to culture and you connect to infrastructure and things like that, you start realizing like, wow, this works too, right?
Yeah. Would you say you're always trying to optimize every situation that you're in?
Everything. Yeah, efficiency and optimization. But we're an optimization software. So my entire life is an optimization algorithm. Yeah.
I was wondering if that carries over into your day-to-day life as well.
Yeah.
Everything that you do.
It's a blessing and it's a curse. Yeah. I mean, I'm optimized down to, I get up every day at 5 a.m. I go to bed every day at 11 o'clock. I only take 25-minute meetings.
Okay.
Other than one, this is an exception.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. From the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, everything is planned, efficient, and optimized. So, and that also goes to my health, my well-being, the way I eat, the way I work out. I read every day for a certain period of time. I have a very strict structure, but for me, I need structure.
Yeah, it helps.
Awesome. Yeah. Optimization is key.
Yeah. So going back a little bit towards your listening and how much you're very in tune to that stuff, how do you stay up with day-to-day updated trends emerging in your industry or even in like the product market research as well? Like how do you stay on top of it? Is it stuff that you read every day? Like what tools do you use?
Yeah, so it's really weird because I'm an experienced type learner. I'm very visual type learner, but for whatever reason, over the years, I don't know if it's something that gotten older, I've become obsessed with reading.
Yeah.
So I read 6 newspapers every single morning when I wake up. Before I get out of bed, I lay in bed.
Nice.
So I read, not newspapers, but I read CNN, I read Fox News. So I like 2 perspectives.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a bunch of variety.
Yeah, I read. There's a really, like, if people are into the markets, I read Seeking Alpha every day. I follow analysts on Seeking Alpha. So I read a ton, which is, when I was 20, I hated reading. I didn't care about anything.
Imagine how much more you would know if you started reading at 20 years old. So that's what we're kind of here to.
Yep. I wish I learned more about investing and saving. I wish I paid attention more, right? But you got to find the things that interest you, right? Writers, publishers, media outlets. And then in my industry, I mean, I'm so plugged in. I've been in, it's almost 10 years now. I've been in the space. I read a lot of newsletters. I attend a lot of live webinars. I used to attend a lot of live conferences.
Yeah.
And because our software is so tied into economics and manufacturing, I'm in my office now in Colorado. I keep Bloomberg on all day, and I watch, when something relates to a customer or supply chain or whatever. I'm just always inundating myself with information, but I inundate myself with the information that I want, right? I don't have social media. I don't really participate in that kind of stuff, but
only
yeah,
what you're going to gain out of it, what you're going to hopefully gain something from.
There's always free content, always webinars or live events or, articles that you can read. I mean, you could customize this thing now to like tell you the news you want to listen to or read. But yeah, what I've learned, one thing that's really important is to really understand your industry. You gotta understand it backwards, forwards.
Yep. Understand the audience and their needs, and there's a whole bunch of different needs that you're going to have to learn to adapt to. And yeah, so I think it's really important to stress the being able to use the tools and resources at our fingertips that our current world has been so graciously given to us. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be used, and I think you said it pretty well yourself. So just to circle back for the last question, so I wonder if your thing has changed now that we've talked a little bit. What is advice that you would give your former 20-year-old self, let's say? A lot.
Oh, it's a deep question. To be more curious and to have taken I don't want to say a bigger risk, but to have maybe assessed the risk I was taking a little bit deeper. But I wish I was more curious about how things work and why the world works the way it does and how everything is interconnected, because everything on this planet is all interconnected.
Yeah, that's a big word of mine I used a lot in school, interconnected, the connectivity of things. And so, yeah, definitely onto something there.
Yeah, and to
be able to notice those patterns.
Not impart so much.
Yeah, but it's people like you, and and like this goes for anybody in design school, anybody just thinking outside of the normal box of the way people work. Recognizing those life patterns and things that go on in your daily life. It doesn't have to be necessarily software codes, but it could be just on your average walks throughout the city, how people are interacting with each other, why they're interacting the way they do. It's all that thinking and research all has a center core.
There's so many things, right? Cultural appreciation, people appreciation,
Also, you just reminded me of something I wanted to ask you. Why do you describe your latest project or module as a cultural product?
What's been really cool about Link 3D is, if we take Mitsubishi Power as a customer of Link 3D,
Mhm.
Mitsubishi Power has a factory in Japan, Europe, and North America.
Mhm.
And the system is all interconnected, right? So all of their machines are connected to our platform. All of the engineers are connected in the platform. What's been cool is we've seen, Japanese engineers communicating with the German engineers through the platform and collaborating on design. I mean, the software, it's cool, right? Because it's one platform that companies can access that allows everybody to communicate and collaborate on.
And being able to talk with you today has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me for this little chat.
Of course. I know I digress. I'm all over the place, so hopefully
That's okay. All right, guys, this has been another episode of A Student's Perspective. Bye.